Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Student Hub Live Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Freshers event. Well, isn't it lovely? We're all sitting here with our virtual cuppa, loads of you online all across the world. I hear it's a lovely spring time in New Zealand, which is where I used to live, and we've got a wonderful international audience and lots of people from all over the UK. Now, my name is Karen Foley, and I'm a lecturer at the Open University, and I present Student Hub Live, which, for those of you who don't know, is the Open University's online platform. It's live and interactive, and what we're trying to do is facilitate some sense of academic community here. And we have heaps of events throughout the year. Hopefully, this is one of the first of many that you'll attend, but we run a lot of these broadcast events where we'll often showcase new module material. We run study skills workshops that focus on things like essay writing and critical thinking. And these are all extracurricular events available to you as an OU student. And you can check out what we've got lined up to get you off to the best start possible on our Student Hub Live website. So this is an online interactive event, and this is one format that we use. Today, what you can see is we've got a lovely chat box with loads of you saying where you are, what you're studying and what you're doing and how you're feeling. It's great to see that some of you are a bit anxious and nervous and excited, and wonderful to see some of our continuing students reassuring all the newbies that it's all going to be okay. We've also got lots of widgets or polling tools that we'd like you to fill in as well. When you fill those in, you can also see what other people at home think as well. So we've asked you things like where you are, whether you're new to the OU, what level you're studying, and what sort of thing you're studying, etc. So to vote on those, you can just click on the one you'd like to interact with and then choose one of the options. But we also have word clouds. Now, these have 3 boxes, and you need to fill in all 3 boxes, otherwise your results won't submit. The computer will say no. So what you need to do is, if you can only think of 1 or 2, that's cool. Just add a full stop or a cross at the end, and then your results will populate. And you can also see what other people think as well. Now, you can ask questions to the great panel I've got lined up for you today. And Damon is on our hot desk, and he'll also answer a lot of your questions. Welcome, Damon. How are you, and how is everybody at home?
I'm good actually. Yeah, and everyone is really excited. You can see the chat box is absolutely full. As you say, we've got people from New Zealand, Jersey, Ayr. There's someone on a Barbara's on a train on the way to Cologne, I think it is. So yeah, everyone's really ready to go. I've got my biscuit all set and
Singular
a
biscuit,
banana
Damon.
just in
I'm
case I
very
run out of energy.
disappointed.
I don't know what calories during lockdown.
Well, this is it, isn't it? But it's
So
very good that you've got a balanced diet there to keep you going throughout the day.
I try.
Now,
I
Damon,
try.
tell us a little bit about yourself, because you work in the faculty as well, and you also teach. So what are you bringing to the party today?
Well, I'm going to sit and interact on the chat box, and if anyone's got any questions, then obviously ask, and I'll do my best to address them. And if people have got questions for the people in the sessions, then I can pass those over for them. I'm an associate lecturer. I teach level 2 international studies or international development. And I used to teach the level 1 social sciences course. So yeah, widespread of things. I work centrally at the at Milton Keynes in the deanery, in the communications team there. That's my main job. But yeah, I love the teaching and I love the students, and it's always great.
Yeah.
So looking forward to starting again, starting to get the lists of students allocated to tutor groups. So they're starting to come through, and we'll be all ready to start in October.
Brilliant. Yes, no, it's very exciting. The start of the new academic year for most students, but not all, because sometimes we'll have a February intake of students and some other modules start at different times of the year. But this is, I guess, our biggest time where we all start together. So it's all exciting, both for students and also for the tutors and everybody else behind the scenes as well. So, as Damon said, you can chat and you can do anything you like in that chat box. Make the most of the opportunity while we've got so many students here all at the same time to ask advice and opinions. How do you fit study around your kids? Various things that are going on. What we often find is that students really who've done it before offer the best advice possible. So please do make the most of that. But if the chat is very overwhelming because there's lots of stuff going on, you can just turn that off. There are different ways of using the interface, and you can just watch the video. The video is also available on catch up afterwards as well. So you can also just chat and sort of take in what you want to and then go back to it in a little while after the show. So choose what you'd like to do and make sure it's best. If you would like to pin the chat, there's a little pin browser at the top if it's scrolling too quickly, so you can go up and down and see maybe something that people have said. And we've also got Twitter. Our hashtag is SHL20 and our handle is @StudentHubLive. You can also email us any questions as well, studenthub@open.ac.uk. So we've got a big program lined up, and today what we're going to start with is level 1, your starter for 10. And I'm joined by Lee Curley and also Neil Younger for the session. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the level 1 modules. Now, Lee is a cognitive psychologist interested in how people make decisions in applied environments. And since joining the OU, he's chaired the B presentation, which is the February presentation of DE100, which is our level 1 psychology module. And he's been actively involved in research and also was an academic conduct officer, which hopefully none of you will ever meet because they pick up the plagiarism where people have copied things off sources that they shouldn't have. And Neil is a lecturer in history, and he's the module team chair of our new level 1 arts and humanities module, A113, which we did a profile of earlier this year, actually. So if you're interested in finding more about that, you can do that in addition to what Neil will tell you right now. But first, let's just take a look at how you're feeling right now, because we've been asking you your thoughts, and those have been all very populated. So let's just sense the mood and see what everyone at home has to say. So we've got excited coming up as the main word that many, many people have said. Ready, tired, nervous, awake, a little tired but nervous, busy, scared, curious, planned, stressed, looking forward to it, not awake yet. So there's lots of things, all full of cold. Oh, that's not good, is it? Anxious, optimistic, coffee needed, motivated, new days ahead, enthusiastic, hungry. So lots and lots of very different emotions, all to be expected at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, I would say. We do have coffee breaks throughout the show, so you can make sure that you do keep yourself topped up. But I'm hoping that we can alleviate some of those fears and worries that are so very, very common. But I think as you'll find out more and meet other students and meet members of staff, hopefully some of those will subside a little bit. Now, let's start then with Neil. So most of the level 1 modules, Neil, include different disciplines. So it's very rare that students will just study one specific thing. And some students don't really understand why that is, why they have so many different things thrown in at level 1, when many students think, I want to go and be a criminologist or a historian. So why do we structure our learning like that, and why is it so valuable to students?
Yeah, well, I mean, all of our in arts and humanities anyway, all of our level 1 modules are interdisciplinary. So we have A111, which covers all 8 of our arts and humanities disciplines, and then students split off into either A112 or A113, and they're both new modules this year. I'll just show you there's the book for A113, which I just got a couple of weeks ago, which I've been working on for the past 2 years or so. So it's really exciting. And this does a lot for students, I think. One thing that it does is that it introduces students to disciplines which they may not really have encountered a great deal before. So, I mean, if we think about, say, history, for example, my own field, we all study that at school. But there are disciplines which typically we don't study at school a great deal, like philosophy, like classical studies, like maybe art history. And so students sort of come into these level 1 modules not really knowing a great deal about these disciplines. Often they find that they plan to study one thing, but they become sort of captivated by something else, and they sort of are carried off with enthusiasm for that. So it gives students a really good overview of what we do in the OU. But also, I think what we find is that the disciplines really speak to one another, and they help illuminate each other. So if we give you A113 as an example, the way that we do this, we cover the disciplines of history, music, philosophy, and religious studies, and we look at 4 revolutionary periods across the past 500 years, and we get each of those disciplines to speak to those revolutionary periods. And that really sort of illuminates how these disciplines speak to one another and sort of help us to understand each of them more deeply. So one of the blocks that we have in 113 is on the 1960s and all of the social changes that were happening there. And we really find that the disciplines, reflect each other. So the philosophical ideas of people like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir are, really tremendously influential on the history of the period, on the student riots, on the rise of individualism. And we see that we have a unit on female American popular musicians, and we look at those thinking about their music itself, but also at the conditions that they lived in, at the fact that they're living through a sexual revolution and so on. So all of these really sort of help us to understand each other, and they remind us that what we're looking at here is all different aspects of humans and what they do and what they make and what they think and so on.
And there's some element as well, I think, that when you combine all of these different disciplines, so many of them are asking different questions, using different methods. And there's something wonderful, I think, about being able to use those different disciplines to interrogate often the same phenomenon, because they are using different approaches often. And it can really draw out some of the strengths of the disciplines you are interested in, even if it means that you're studying, I guess, disciplines that are perhaps less interesting to students.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are a lot of sort of similarities in the skills that we use across these disciplines as well. We sort of, for example, interrogating primary sources is something which is really important in a lot of these different disciplines. And it shows us how, disciplines ask different questions about, human events, human creations. But they use many similar methods, and they think about things in many similar ways. And it's sort of this interdisciplinary study helps us to understand the differences between disciplines, but it also helps us to understand the overlaps and the similarities. And both of those are really important, I think, in understanding what we're doing when we study the past or the present.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And we've got lots of DD 102 students and A111 students all meeting each other in the chat room, which is wonderful. I used to teach on DD 102, which is our level 1 introductory social sciences module, and in that you'll meet the street, and just using one example and various different lenses, you start to look and explore a very common world that we all experience, but from very different angles. And it's so exciting to start to use some of those discipline lenses to research things that one would think are sort of fairly I guess, simple on the offset, but actually end up being far more complicated. I mean, Lee, psychology, for example, one would think, well, that's quite a nice clear-cut discipline. But in actual fact, psychology lends on so many disciplines in itself, doesn't it?
So psychology really is the study of human behavior and the mind, and because of that, it really creates a nice interdisciplinary kind of area of research. For instance, looking at the way the mind interacts with the brain shows a nice connection between biology, psychology, neuroscience. Looking at how people perceive themselves within society and how they interact with society causes a nice blend between psychology, social psychology, and then sociology. My study, I look at juror decision making or forensic bias, and a lot of my research is interconnected with legal scholars and criminologists. And psychology is tied with so many different areas. Originally, it kind of has its origins in philosophy. It's connected quite well with economics and politics, and also linked with psychiatry and other allied health professions. So I think as you start your psychological adventure, you'll really start to see how interdisciplinary psychology truly is.
And not only are you looking at the content, but what's so exciting about psychology is you're using different methods, different ways of exploring the world as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that, in particular, things like the different research methods that you're going to introduce the students to?
Yeah, of course. So in psychology, especially in first year, you're going to get some teaser sessions towards quantitative analysis, which is measurements and statistics and how you can see differences between groups. And a lot of those research designs and the analysis we use on that data shares with the life sciences such as biology, physics, chemistry. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you're going to be looking at qualitative data. You're going to be interviewing people. And you're going to be analysing their data in a qualitative manner. and that links in well with the social sciences, psychiatry, stuff like that. So psychology really is this blend, this midpoint between the more physical sciences like biology and the more social sciences like sociology, and it really is right in between there.
Brilliant. Now let's see what people at home said. We've asked everyone what they're most excited about and what they're most worried about. So let's take a look and see. So firstly, let's focus on the positives. What are you most excited about? Well, learning and getting started is coming up very commonly here. Finishing my degree. So there are some continuing students here. Welcome to the session and thank you so much for joining us. Starting the courses, new opportunities, knowledge, future me, more than halfway through, module subject I love, module content, like-minded people, new challenges, moving forwards, improving my skills, so many wonderful things here, meeting my tutor, experiments, furthering my career, opening my mind. So there's wonderful things in store for people here as well. Let's take a look at what you said you were worried about as well. So the worried wordle that we asked you really features time here, which I think is one of the most common things. Essay writing, TMAs, referencing, failing, falling behind, getting behind, not understanding, missing something, terminology, keeping track, juggling work, understanding topics, getting overwhelmed. So there are lots and lots of things here. I would just reflect that so many of these are very, very common, so much so that we run dedicated Student Hub Live sessions to them. We have workshops on time management, on essay writing, on critical thinking, understanding the questions. For those of you who are new, on module start day, we're going to be showing you all around the virtual learning environment, etc., in some Adobe Connect workshops. So please be mindful that these are really, really common things, and there is support and help out there for you in so many different ways, not just from Student Hub Live, but that is just one option. Lee, I'd like to talk about level 1 in context, because I think very often, as we can see here with students, when they're starting, they are worried about falling behind. These are very rational fears. But many students forget, I think, where level 1 sits, although we do have students at the whole range of the spectrum. And I wonder if we can just sort of talk about level 1 in terms of future studies, and I guess where it sits, and really what students should be focusing on right now, and what they not should be worrying about, but I guess where those worries are best placed.
Yep, of course. So level 1 at the Open University, I just want to say firstly, it prepares you better than any other university I've been associated with. It really steps you through from maybe you've never done higher education at all. It'll step you through the skills of how to collect data, how to analyse data. And first year's all about giving you a bedrock to advance on for later study. You're also going to learn about psychological theories, which might be a bit basic, but they're also going to be the ones that are historically important. And they're going to allow you to advance and see how psychology has progressed over the years. You're also going to learn a lot more skills also in relation to how to be an OU student, how to learn online, how to work online with other individuals, and also important skills that will help you for future employment or maybe future study postgrad, for instance, such as time management skills, communication skills, and key skills such as critical thinking skills.
Yeah, and very often, I mean, these are skills that you will meet again and again and again in more and more complex ways as you progress in your degree qualification. And something like psychology in particular, as you say, Lee, will introduce you to some of those key principles that will be revisited. And it's really important, I guess, to spend some time thinking about this. Very often we focus on the content and trying to remember the content, but it's important to remember that these are actually enabling you to develop your skills, your ways of approaching, your ways of looking at data and looking at different methods and seeing, how that can help make sense of the world. Neil, what about arts and the humanities? How are some of those key skills developed at level 1?
Well, I think there's a few things to say there. One is that they're, as people have been saying, develop really gradually and slowly, and it's about, in sort of arts and humanities, it's often really hard to sort of pin down those skills, because it's not like learning an equation or something, like as you might do in mathematics, or memorizing a new verb like you might do if you're learning a language. The skills that we have in arts and humanities around writing, around sort of interrogating sources, maybe around sort of more discipline specific things like listening to music, or analyzing a philosophical argument. They're not things that you can sort of master overnight. They're something that you sort of start gradually, and you sort of build up, sort of unit after unit and module after module. And it's a process of sort of continual incremental improvement that, it doesn't stop when you finish your degree. Even you sort of we're all improving our own skills. So I think it's something where one shouldn't feel that one has to master it instantly. It's you're going to be led through these things really gradually, and we sort of accept that it'll take a while to get good at it, and that's absolutely fine. But I
Absolutely.
mean,
And
there's
that is
lots of
why Sorry, I was going to say that's why it's very important to pass level 1, because that way you can get to level 2. And if you do fail, there are opportunities to resit, and that can and does happen, especially if you don't answer the question. That's almost a guaranteed way, I think, of not passing. But as long as you seek help, read the questions, and really, make the most of the opportunities, it's very likely that students will pass this module. But at level 1, you need to get through it. Where it really counts in terms of your degree classification, like whether you get a first or a 2-1 or whatever, that's really at level 3. And level 1 is that opportunity to go and make those mistakes. And as you say, Neil, it's about learning. We're nearly out of time, and I just wanted to end with one quick question. Neil, you'd mentioned that you have got this book in your hands that's taken you 2 years to write. But I wanted to ask you, Lee, about how topical some of this stuff is, how some of these issues and methods really relate to the real world. Can you just give me one example about something, say, in psychology that students are going to meet
Yeah, of
that could
course.
really help them understand the world today?
Yeah, of course. So in D100, for instance, you're going to be learning about authoritarianism, which is a personality trait that predisposes individuals towards fascism and kind of extreme ideologies. So you're going to be learning about that, and that really does relate to the rise of the far right or the alt-right currently. You're also going to be learning about, you're going to be developing these critical thinking skills and learning about statistics that'll be able to help you in this modern fake news era to critically think about stuff and see stuff from different viewpoints. So psychology is very relevant. I think even more historical theories relate right back to today.
Absolutely. Well, we could talk a lot about that, Lee, and about, how people collude with certain ideas and, conform with others, etc. So it's all very, very relevant in today. But thank you so much, Lee and Neil. That's been an absolutely wonderful introduction. And I hope that you at home are feeling a little bit more confident, in particular, all our wonderful level 1 students there. So these are some of the lovely people. But next, we're going to be meeting a student, Billy Doherty. But first, we're going to have a quick video break, which is about Billy, who is our next speaker. So if you haven't topped your coffee up, now might be the time to do so. We'll be back in 5 minutes where we will meet the man himself. See you then.